They say never catch a falling knife. And I agree with them to a point. It's very difficult to make money when the market's dropping. It's a skill in itself, and it's something that we manage to do most of the time. Don't always get it right. Most of the time we do, but it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's certainly not for beginners.
John Howard is one of the UK's most experienced property developers, traders and investors with over 4 decades of experience within the industry. John's extensive expertise stems from the sale and purchase of over 4,000 houses, apartments and developments across the UK, from traditional houses to hotels and large scheme developments. One of John's more recent projects being the £27 million construction of 150 apartments on Ipswich waterfront. John now shares his knowledge through his consultancy, seminars and 4-book. John appears on Sky's Property Elevator, a property graduate, alongside being a regular contributor for Property Question Time.
So John Howard, welcome to the Wealth and Business Podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
It took you a bit of time, but you eventually invited me.
You're here.
I'm here.
All the way from Ipswich,
All
right?
the way from Ipswich on my way to the Isle of Wight, would you believe?
Oh,
Right.
my days.
It doesn't stop, does it?
No, it doesn't. Well, I would have actually thought at your age,
Thanks.
being in property as old as I am, and you're still grafting, John.
Yeah. I really enjoy what I do. And I'm not that old.
Well, I've been in property as old as I am. Like, I'm 43 years old.
That's depressing to know. That's actually depressing. I thought you were older than that. It's a shame.
No.
No, it's joking apart. No, it's flown by. It really has flown by. And I really enjoy, I really enjoy meeting people and doing the deal, and that it's all the fun is doing the deal. And I was talking to an 81-year-old gentleman the other day who owns a lot of property in Norfolk, very wealthy man. And he's just done a deal with another guy I know who's 84, who's just bought a site off him for £3.5 million. So they're still doing it at the age of 81 and 84. So I've got a long way to go, yeah.
You've got a long way to go.
Yep.
For someone like you who've been in property for over 40 years, you've seen all the seasons.
Yes.
I would love to use the word seasons because in life we have summer, winter, autumn, spring. We have all these different types of work. So you've been around, you've seen it.
I've seen it. I've survived 3 serious property recessions.
Let's actually start from that. What is recession in the first place?
Well, a recession really is when the economy bombs, if you like, for want of a better word. And many people get into financial trouble, financial difficulty, employment goes up. And in many cases, inflation goes up at the same time. Yep. And it's a very serious situation that normally lasts 2 or 3 years.
This episode of the Wealth and Business Podcast is brought to you by our partner and sponsor, Ramsey & White. Ramsey & White is an award-winning specialist intermediary covering property, finance, wealth management, and estate agency. The Ramsey & White team can help you secure or source funding for your buy-to-lets, your HMOs, your commercial development, holiday lets, portfolio acquisition. They also offer financial reviews covering pension and investment. Not restricted by lenders or locations, the team at Ramsey & White will help you build momentum covering or growing your investment portfolio. Feel free to contact Ramsey & White, who is our partner and our sponsor for this episode of the Wealth and Business Podcast. The links to contacting Ramsey & White will be somewhere around the show notes. Make sure to reach out to them, as this company has actually helped me build my property portfolio over the last 6 years.
People often say, oh, don't get into property, there's recession ongoing. And what would you say to that? Because yes, obviously, recession is when, the entire economy is going through challenges, financial traumas, and all these different issues. And people say the best time to buy properties is even in recession. I mean, for someone who's been through that cycle, you've done over 4,000 property transactions. And you've basically seen it all in property. So one of the reasons I'm so excited for this interview and this chat with you on the Wealth and Business podcast today is because I'm going to be able to learn a lot from you. So what would you really say? So when people use that word, the best time to get started in property is now, recession, no recession, interested or no interested, get started.
I would totally agree with them that the best time to buy is coming out of a recession. But of course, you need to know the telltale signs of when you're coming out of the property recession. And I've made more money coming out of property recessions than at any other time. Because when the market is too hot, and everyone's doing it, with my seminars, I have a thing where I talk about my dog Mabel.
Yeah.
And my dog Mabel could make as much money as everyone else in a rising market. As long as her paw was a signature, she could make as much money as the rest of us. There's nothing clever in it particularly.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact she wouldn't know when to stop. And knowing when to stop is the key. Because you take some gamblers, they make the money, but then they don't know when to stop and they then lose it again.
Yeah.
So knowing when to stop and seeing what's going to happen and reading the market is vital.
I totally agree with you. Reading the market, it's something that it's so valuable. You have to understand what is the market, because I was having a very interesting conversation with someone, and then they said to me, I want to do flips in this market. And I said, well, depending on the kind of flips you want to do, because, when at the moment we have the interest rates crisis.
Perfect storm at the moment. It's been a perfect storm. So you've had build costs go up 30% over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
You've had interest rates double. You've had property prices drop 10 to 15%, depending who's telling the truth, who isn't. Now, of course, it's a micro market, so there's always somewhere in England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, where the market hasn't dropped. And it might have even gone up a little bit, but that will be for other reasons. But in general, the market has got tough. I borrowed 4.2% from one of the big banks 3 years ago, to do a development. I borrowed the money at 6.1%. I spoke to them the other day. I paid them back last year. They'd be glad. You'd be glad to know. I spoke to them last week before, about some more finance for different projects. And they said, John, that will now cost you 12.5%.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Now, that's a hell of an increase for anyone to... So anybody in the middle of a development where they've got interest rates going up like that, with materials going up 20, 30%, with prices coming down, that's what I call a perfect storm. And very few people can survive that. I always say with a property recession, it's this. First year, the idiots go. Second year, the people have just been a bit unlucky go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're about the timing's wrong. We developed 150 flats in Ipswich. If I had 150 flats on the market now, I'll be concerned. I've sold them all, done. But I'll be concerned if it was now. And then the third thing, the rest of us go. Or we don't go, but we have to pull our horns in and we have to work out, duck and dive and get out of the market, or whatever we do.
Yeah.
Because eventually, if the market drops 35%, we're all in trouble. Because the banks come to you and say, which they did in 2008, John, you've got a 4 million revolving facility you're not using, overdraft facility, we're going to take it off you.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, your portfolio is worth 30% less or 35% less than it was last year.
Yeah.
So we want that revalued, and we want you to pay to sign a personal guarantee for 3.5 million quid. Now, I didn't have any personal guarantees when I walked in that bank in 2008. I walked out with my 4 million overdraft facility gone and having to sign a £3.5 million guarantee. And then they said, after revaluing all the properties, which cost 84,000 quid to do, which they took out my account, we want our money back anyway. Now, fortunately, because I wasn't overgeared, we can move to a different bank and there was no problem. But of course, if you're overgeared, that's a problem.
I mean, in today's world, when we talk about overgearing and not overgearing, but overgearing seems to be something that is becoming very popular, as you already know.
Yeah.
For me, I kind of like it, but I kind of again know how to control it. One of the biggest thing is you must know when to start and when to stop. As you mentioned, when to enter, when to leave.
Without question.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's quite important.
And talking about overgearing. Okay. Now, for those who don't really understand, because on our podcast we have cross audiences, business, property, entertainment, those that love a little bit of fun, seeing some properties being developed. And when we have, special guests like you, we might have to obviously define some of the wording. So what does overgearing mean? And then I'm going to obviously...
So overgearing is when you borrow too much against a property. So say you borrow 90% loan to value. In other words, if the property is £100,000, you borrow 90,000 to buy the property at £100,000. So you only put 10,000 in, and then the market drops 30%. So now all of a sudden the property's only worth 70,000, and you owe 90,000. Then that's overgearing. Now there's a time that people talk about good debt and bad debt, and the time to be ballsy with your debt is when the market's on the bottom and starts to come up. And that might be shares, it might be property, whatever you do.
Yeah.
That's the time. And the timing timing is everything. So if you're looking at a development now, which we are looking at doing developments, and that development won't be ready for 2 years, is it a good time to buy or not? Because in 2 years' time, the market will be a lot different than it is now.
Yeah.
Catching a falling knife, they say never catch a falling knife. Never catch a falling knife. And I agree with them to a point. It's very difficult to make money when the market's dropping.
Yeah.
It's a skill in itself, and it's something that we manage to do most of the time. Don't always get it right. Most of the time we do, but it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's certainly not, I don't think, for beginners. However, that is now, of course, if you're renting the property out for many years, doing rent to rent or buy to let, then actually it doesn't really matter, because over 20, 25 years, the market's gone up 5% a year. So if you're retaining things for property long term, that's very different to property developing, much safer. And it doesn't really matter to a point when you buy, because it's going to come back and do better than what you paid for it in the first place.
One of the greatest lessons I learned from my late father, he says, as long as you buy land and you know how to bank them.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about land? They're not making any more of it.
Yeah. And
they don't make any more land.
And there's not enough of them.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And he's absolutely right. Wise man.
Wise, absolutely. And no one I give it to a wise son like me.
Well, that's he's obviously passed it on.
Yes, he did. So we talked about overgearing there, but in terms of overgearing money, so for example, people who are leveraging, other people's money, something I'm very passionate about, by the way, leveraging other people's money to acquire asset and, leveraging the same property to pay back the investor. Yes. At some point you will overgear anyway. So at some point there are deals I did in the past where I've gone up to 85% loan to value, and I've also gone to 85% loan to value. But obviously time has passed now.
But Daniel, you know what you're doing. That's the difference. You know what you're doing, and you advise people accordingly so they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's very different to someone just coming out of the blue and saying, oh, this is what I'm going to do, because without any advice or experience, that's dangerous.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't, spend time to actually, like you said, the experience, the knowledge, knowing what you're doing. Because traditionally, a lot of people see property, and see different types of strategies, and especially with a lot of, I'll use the word gospel, or rather people who are shouting out about get to property, get rich tomorrow, and people not really understanding that property is not, get rich quick, but it's definitely get rich for sure, as long as you understand exactly like what you said, the traditional buy-to-let, people buying properties to hold on to those property for a longer time, then you can buy in any market. But if you're trading it,
it's different, and it's a different skill set, one that you can teach people without question, and we both do that.
Yeah.
But you still need to have a bit of a talent. I think you need a feel for it. You try and teach me to be an accountant, Daniel, and I wouldn't have a clue.
True.
I'd be terrible accountant. I'd be awful. and an accountant, and I have one or two of them, I've had on my seminars and stuff, don't make very good property developers because they haven't got that feel. They're too sort of, upright, if you like, and stringent, and haven't got that natural feel for a deal.
Yeah.
But they're brilliant at what they do. So it's horses for courses, really.
True.
And not everyone can transfer. And if they can't, I say to them, look, I don't think it's for you. You're better off perhaps to be an investor and let someone else do it and take a share that way. So there's lots of different ways of making money out of property. Lots of different ways.
100%. So, John, let's go way back, about 40 years now when you first started property.
Yeah, depress me. Go on.
I'm not going to depress you at all.
Good.
So, looking back, over 40 years you've been in property, what would you say 3 major things it took you to stay in the market 40 years later? All right, that's number one. So 3 things that made you stay in the market, that's one. And then the second question is that when you started property over 40 years ago, did you have the money? Did you just get into property? And my third question as well is that...
It's like an exam. I can never remember all this lot.
Okay, I've paused there. First question.
Me. Go on. Yeah, go on.
So 40 years,
yes.
What are the 3 things that you think you learned in keeping you in this market?
Well, my wife says I've got one talent and one talent only, which is a bit depressing, really. Well, that is dogged determination. Dogged determination. And I would say being mentally consistent, doing what you need to do every day and being consistent, finding deals, especially. I've dedicated my life, really, to find property deals. And sometimes I go for 3 or 4 months without finding a good deal. Other times I might get 2 or 3 fall on my lap. So dogged determination. I love the saying that form is temporary, class is permanent, because you can't always ring the bell. Things are going to go wrong in property outside your control sometimes. But it's how you deal with those difficult situations. That's what makes you into a good property developer or good investor. Not when it's easy, you learn nothing. When it's tough and it's difficult, it really sorts people out a little bit. And it puts you in a very good position for when the market improves.
So someone else who's been in the industry for over 40 years, I want to keep going back to that because it has a really strong significance. To this interview, because experience, knowledge beats anything.
Well, it's interesting. I think it was 50 chairmen of companies, big companies, were asked, would you pick someone who's got a degree, top degree, to run your company, or someone with charisma and an energy to themselves? And every one of them said charisma and energy.
Yeah.
Charisma and energy. And I think if you look at the political scene at the moment, which I'm relatively close to, neither leader at the moment, or all 3 leaders, if you like, the main parties have got charisma. Neither of them have.
Yeah.
Or none of them have, all 3. The Liberals either. They haven't got charisma. They're very bright, very, very clever people, but they haven't got charisma.
But what about the one who has gone to employ those with experience around him, including the former Prime Minister?
Well, it's all about, I always say this, surround yourself with the best people you can afford.
Yes, best brains.
The best people, because you know what? The best brains and people don't cost a lot more than the ones that aren't quite so good.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone who works with me and who consults to me is brighter than I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem. I'm a really good delegator. I'm not a control freak. I'm a delegator. And I try and surround myself with really good people, and then I support those people, really. And if there's a problem, I deal with it. You always end up dealing with the problems. It's not just fun as it used to be.
Yeah.
Because you end up doing the difficult bits and you let everyone else do the easier bits, to be fair. But that's all part of it.
Yeah. Someone who's done over 4,000 properties.
Yeah.
Finding money.
Yeah.
How has it always been for you?
Well,
let's start
from the very start.
From the very start.
Well, I always say to people, the first people to go to borrow money if you haven't got any is your family. And not every family can help. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you how it all started for me. It all started really for me with my grandparents, who in 1947...
Jesus Christ me.
I know. I wasn't alive then, by the way.
Okay.
In 1947, they owned a shoe shop in Mansfield. Okay. And two boys came into that shop. And my grandfather was so impressed with these two boys that went to Gresham School in Norfolk.
Yeah.
That he vowed that he would set a trust up and he would put enough, my grandmother would save enough money for his grandchildren to go to that school.
Yeah.
And luckily, there was only one daughter. Otherwise, I don't think he could have done it.
Yeah.
And all three of my mother's, all three of us went to private school on the back of my grandfather and my grandmother saving money and putting it into a trust. And although academically I didn't do very well, I was very sporty, but it gave me a great start in life because I mix with people with money and I mix with people without money. And also I had ginger hair, which I still got, thank God, and I stammered. So when you put all that combination together, away at school, stammer, red hair, you have to take the rough with the smooth. And nowadays it would be called bullying probably. In those days, just got on with it.
Yeah.
That molds your character. And I've always been able to, laugh at myself and have a certain amount of humour, which I think hopefully normally works when I speak at events. Not always probably, but I normally, there's some people that can tell jokes, Daniel. I can't tell a joke. I'm terrible at jokes, so don't do it. There's some people who have got a little bit of a blag, if you like, and can make things more amusing than others. And if you can do that, do it. If you can't do it, don't. We've seen that, haven't we, both of us at different events where people think they're funny and they're not.
They're not.
And it just comes across really badly. But I've always had that ability, once I got over my stammering, to be able to be relatively amusing. And I always say, if you're doing business, you need to do it with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Yeah, it's very, very important to do anything you're doing in life with a smile on the face. Yeah. A smile can do a lot. I
always used to say to the kids, always, get rid of that face, always smile. And when you're going down the drive, whether you're saying good morning to Bert the gardener or, Sir somebody or whatever, you treat everybody the same way.
True.
Everybody gets treated the same way. And I've made sure that they do that. And I've always done that. And I think that's so important.
Very, very important. So, John, for someone like yourself who has got so many experiences and you had the opportunity to have been supported by your parents to start, obviously you mentioned the best way to always start is friends and family.
Yes.
I would rather family first before friends.
Yes.
In these days, again, it seems to be like nothing has really changed, isn't it? Because I teach people these days about, the first bank of borrowing starts from banks of mom and dad, friends and relatives, work colleagues.
It's very interesting that 35% of first-time buyers this year have borrowed money from their parents or family. And the 8th biggest bank or lending institution this year in the UK, lending so far £8.2 billion, is the Bank of Mum and Dad. Which is amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And what happened for me, my father was a greengrocer and he had a good little business. And then he decided one day he wanted to be an estate agent when he was 60 odd, so sort of my age. And he bought a small agency in the same town. So one day he was a greengrocer, next day he's a estate agent. Bit tricky that.
Yeah.
Bit tricky to explain that one away. But anyway, he did. And he ran it very, very, him and a secretary in those days, very modestly. And then he'd been ill, and I joined him when I was 17 because I could learn to drive.
Yeah.
And after 4 months, he was ill, went back to hospital. So I was running the show at 17 years, 4 months, not having a clue. Didn't like answering the phone because I stammered and didn't want to make a phone call. bit of a problem. I was doing property management. I was doing all sorts of different things, sales, trying to do sales. And then he came back and we were working together and so on. And then there was two property developers we used to deal with a bit. And they had the end of the rump, if you like, the end of a development, which was a cottage and a flat that were rented out as in those days they were regulated tenants, so you couldn't get them out. They were sitting tenants basically. And they said, "Do you want to buy it?" I said, "Well, no, I'm going to buy it."
Was that the money?
So what I did, I spoke to my dad wouldn't lend me the money because he didn't want me to lose it. So I spoke to my mother, and my mother said, "How much interest will I get?" And I said, whatever I said, I can't remember what it was in those days, 10% probably. "And what share of a profit will I get?" I said, "Well, I wasn't going to give you a share of profit as well, Mum, but I can do." So we agreed. I think she took 25% share of the profit and interest, and I bought it. I bought two. So on my 18th birthday, I borrowed some money from the bank. I had £1,000 I saved myself, and I had my mother put in for. I think I paid $7,800 for these two flats.
$7,000.
I sold one of them for £6,000 to the tenant who was already in there, because they got a discount because they were sitting tenants. So I arranged that before I bought it, and I do that quite a lot. Where even now I might agree to sell a property before I paid for it as part of it to help, and then I was left with the other one. So my mother got her money back. She bought herself a new kitchen because my dad wouldn't buy her a new kitchen. So she said, "I can buy it myself now, thank you very much." So she bought a new kitchen. She was delighted. Yeah. And of course she said, "What's the next deal we're doing together?" So, and that's how it all started for me.
I recently did a video out there and I said, it's better to own a percentage of $1 billion than to try and own $1 billion yourself.
Sure.
And clearly what your mother demonstrated there was,
she was on the ball. She was on the ball.
You know,
she was on the ball. She's always been, she died last year, but she's always been very, very supportive to all three of us. And, had great confidence in me that I could do it because, I'm sure she wasn't sure I could do it, but she had the confidence to lend me the money. And I found it very natural. And I realised very quickly that I didn't really want to be an estate agent. I wanted to buy and sell property and be a property developer. And when I was little, I used to buy bikes out of the local paper and leave them out the front to my mother's disgust to see if I could sell all push lawnmowers in those days. It was she wasn't too impressed, but there we go.
Wow, what a journey, hey?
Yeah.
So you're someone you're very well established in the industry. In fact, your name, John Howard, is a name that anywhere it's mentioned, everyone just says the old John, the guy with the most wisdom, knowledge.
Old John, I'm not sure I particularly like that terminology, old John. That might stick now. You've got so many listeners in this podcast. It goes to thousands and thousands of people. Thanks a lot. I'm now going to be called Old John. Thanks a lot.
The old John with the knowledge, you've achieved some great things and you focus on commercial development, property development. You build houses, you build multiple buildings. One of your most recent project acquisition was 26 million.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Not all my money, unfortunately.
Of course.
But it'd be nice if it was. No, and that project, people, actually, I know it might sound a bit flippant, but at that level, everything's done for you. Mm-hmm. So actually, you've got so many consultants. I mean, on that job, 150 flats plus the commercial bit at the bottom, £840,000 worth of consultants on the job.
Yeah.
So, at that level, you're looked after. Whereas when I still do, I buy a house in 7 flats or 5 flats or something, I'm having to. I'm not spoilt in those ones. I've got a building surveyor, but I'm still ducking and diving and getting it all organised and sorted and trading and selling it. And so I've got a sales director for the bigger projects, but certainly I'm still very much hands-on, if you like, for the smaller ones myself.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the smaller ones. I think the other thing is, Daniel, that a lot of property developers who have done the sort of deals I do or have done don't do small deals anymore. Whereas I'm happy to do a deal if I can make some money. I'll do it property-wise. A lot won't. Oh no, we don't do anything less than so many million or whatever. All that business. I will. I'm very happy if you can find me a house for 60,000 I can sell for 80,000, Daniel. I'll buy it tomorrow. There you go. There's a challenge for you.
Absolutely. Always a challenge. I love
challenge.
I love those challenges. Interesting you say what you said just now. It's like the bigger you get, the easier this actually becomes, to be honest.
Yeah.
I remember, for me, I started from rent to rent, worked my way up to doing refurbs, using the buy, refurbish, refinance model, and just sitting down with, a legendary like yourself, I would say, who's been in property.
I think you mean old, but carry on. Old John. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so a legendary like yourself who's been there, done that, done multi-million pound projects. Now, John, what is the best two things to look at? All right, number one, when it comes to funding, that's number one.
Well, what I would say is the two most important things are trying to come in on the project, whether it's 2 flats or 150 or more, is coming on time and on budget. On time and on budget. And that's very hard to do, to come in on time and on budget. And everyone struggles to do it. We struggle to do it all the time. Even the big contract, whoever big and successful you are, it's very, very difficult to do. And by the way, everybody in property development has lost money at some point on a deal. So if anyone says to you they've never lost any money in property and they do property development, not investment, property development, they're liars. Promise you. We've all done it. Doesn't matter if you're, however big you are, big PLCs, they've all lost money on deals. We all have. But it's how you deal with that situation is what is the difference. That's the first thing. In terms of borrowing money, I always think you need to, and we borrow money from bridging companies now because we have to, and we also borrow money from well-known banks.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is to give those banks and investors, and it might be that you borrow money from a private investor.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is to give them confidence. Give them confidence. Under promise and over deliver. It's hugely important. Whoever you're dealing with, that the outcome is better than they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And a simple example is that is if they thought, if they think you're going to make 100, they're going to make 100,000 out of the deal, and you tell them 80 and they make 100, they'll be delighted.
Yeah.
Delighted. That's important. That you under promise and over deliver. You do it the other way, and we made 20,000 less than we thought. It's still a good result, but it's the same figures.
Yeah.
So that's really important, and in a way, it's the same with the banks because you get a reputation with the banks. They've got confidence in you. They will lend you the money. And a managing director of quite a big bank said to me the other day, and he's absolutely right. We lend to the person as much as we do the deal. We lend to the person as much as we do the deal. And that is absolutely right.
You're absolutely right. I think I had the opportunity to spend a couple of days with you the other day, and I said to you during our conversation, and I said that there was a specific deal I was doing, and the lender had to, for some reason, what was the lender looking for on my social media? So basically, this lender has looked at my social.
Must be a fan.
So this particular lender had gone through my social media, and because especially on LinkedIn can actually tell you who looked at you,
checked you out,
who checked you out, where do they work and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, I saw, I'm not going to mention the company. I'm not going to give them free ad. I'm not going to give them free advertising. So, anyways, I saw that they looked at me, and for me, that process of them looking at me was later at some point because they did send an email through asking more questions.
Yeah.
So I saw that what they were doing actually was credibility analysis.
Yeah.
Credibility analysis. Okay, number one, I'm a portfolio landlord, and they wanted to verify a few things here and there. So yeah, absolutely completely agree with you that somehow when we do deals, credibility is everything.
I think credibility is everything, and sometimes you can buy a property cheaper because of your credibility than someone else has offered, because they'd rather deal with you because they know you're going to do the deal, rather than someone they don't know, even if they've offered more money.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I always say with this social media, and we're all involved in it one way or the other, is be careful what you put on there, especially privately. Be careful what you put. If you're going for a job interview or anything these days, be careful what you put on there, because it can come back and kick you up the backside.
Yeah, especially in the world we live today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're very, very, very right. So, John, you've built a multi-million-pound personal property portfolio.
Yep.
You've owned multiple lettings agent, exited a few as well. You own hundreds and hundreds of properties, and you're still very active. How do you cope?
Well, very easily, because I delegate. And I end up not always doing the nice bits. Someone else does those these days in a way. I end up probably doing the bits that aren't so nice sometimes, the challenges, if you like, sorting out problems. But I don't find it that difficult. We've got 7, 8 different sites on across the UK at the moment, but I've got good people running them. Every site we have's got a challenge. We only really, at the moment, we've only been buying, most of the sites we've been buying have been off receivers, administrators. So we're buying redundant buildings that are part finished. So they come with their unique challenges because someone's failed with them.
Yeah.
And we have to unravel the problems and put them right to make them saleable again.
Yeah.
But I enjoy that side of things, and we've got 2 deals in Scotland at the moment we're doing, and as I said, it's taken me 42. I bought them last year, so 42 years to do a deal in Scotland, basically. But I got there in the end. So and now I like the Scottish market, and I think we'll do more up there.
Yeah.
So it's nice to. I was in the Isle of Man a few months ago looking at a deal on a church where someone's gone bankrupt and they got 12 part finished flats in the church. So we're hopefully doing that deal. So we'll go anywhere. We're doing a deal in Cardiff at the moment. We've done a few deals there over the years. So I think having that sort of traveling a little bit and having a varied portfolio is quite interesting. And you meet different people. And of course, with my seminars and other bits I do, YouTube and this sort of stuff, a bit of TV, it's all good fun.
You get time to do so many things. You're on TV, you're on Property Elevator, you're a property graduate, consistently on the National Residential Landlord Association. You're consistently featured on that platform, and you do so much. Where'd you get all the energy from?
Well, I just do it naturally. Really, I don't really think about it too much. I just get up in the mornings nice and early and crack on.
It's as simple as that.
Simple as that.
So let's talk about my favorite part, which I'm transitioning into now. I'm transitioning into residential development, which means building, from the ground up. Yes. I enjoy refurbs. Yeah. There's money in refurbs, but having sat where you sat and you spoke about development, it just kind of opened up a new horizon for myself. What is the first thing anyone looking to, for someone like myself, let's go from 2 angles. So from someone like myself, who basically has got some level of understanding of the property space and wants to go into, development, which is now, developing property, building residential property or blocks of flats from ground up. What is the one thing that I need to do to begin? Well,
first of all, you've got a natural ability to it, and you've done an awful lot you've got a large portfolio and all the rest of it. So, it's different for you probably than it is other people. Yeah. You find it naturally easy to do. I think the most important thing when you're doing property development is consultants. You need the consultants. You need the planning consultants, you need the architects, you need the structural engineers, you need the building surveyor, you need the flood risk advisor, you name it.
Yeah.
You need a serious team around you. Mm-hmm. And that team varies, obviously, depending what development you're doing.
Yeah.
But you're getting professional advice of professionals who know what they're doing. They're fully qualified. They know what they're doing. When you're doing, houses up, you don't need those people.
No.
But when you start, ground up, as we call it, you definitely need them. And they will protect you and advise you. They're expensive, and they have to be built cost-wise into the development. But they will advise you and protect you, especially the building surveyor.
And save you a lot of money as well.
Save you a lot of money, yeah, and stop you getting into trouble. Might stop you buying one or two,
yeah,
which is good because you would have made a mistake on them, maybe potentially. But like we said earlier, surround yourself with the best people.
You mentioned, during this conversation so far, you said, you would make mistakes and it's a little bit of fun. Let's get on with it. Obviously, your experience in the industry is what makes you say that you make mistake. It's never going to go according to plan, but get on with it.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that is a lot of mindset issue there because, not a lot of people have that, pick it up, get along with it mindset.
And you're very good at mindset, and you teach it, and you do. Yeah. I've heard you, and you're very good at it. Some people naturally don't need it, in my view, and others need a lot of it. And both of them can succeed in property, without question. When I look at a deal, people automatically think you're a risk taker. You're a risk taker. You're a risk taker, John. And I was speaking in Manchester quite recently, and this guy comes up to me and he goes, I couldn't take the risks you take, John. I couldn't do it. I said, well, we try and de-risk everything before we start. And I said, what do you do? He says, I build one-off houses for footballers. Really? How much are they? Oh, between 3 and 5 million each. That's a risk to me.
Yep.
Because it would worry me to death to do a house.
Just a house.
Who's to say it's worth 5 million or 3 million?
For one celebrity to
Do you know what I mean? And also, if you couldn't sell it, you had to rent it. You could never get a return on your money. So I see that as a bigger risk than what I do. And because I spread everything around the country and I do multiple numbers, so, and I always say to people, if you can do a deal which has got 3 or 4 units, it's safer in a way than doing 1 unit because you got that flexibility of keeping 2, keeping 3, selling them all, renting them all. You've got more flexibility. And de-risking is really important. So we try and de-risk everything before we start. Literally, I ask myself to get the answer. I ask myself the question, and the question is, if it all goes wrong, if everything goes wrong, can I get my money back?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, so I do it. So I look at a deal in 3 ways really. 1, can I get the bank's money back?
Yeah.
That's the first one. That's a relief to get the bank's money back because it means the bank isn't going to come after you. 2, can I get my money back I put in, or my investors' money, knowing it's my money? Great. So the first one's the bank. That's a relief. The second one is my own money. That's a relief. And the great one, the best one, is the profit.
Yeah.
The best one's the profit.
Wow. John, it's been amazing having you on the podcast. Just as we wrap up this episode, right, a few things I wanted to ask you as well is we don't know what next year is going to be like in this industry. We have a possibility of a new government coming in. And I know you're very familiar when it comes to government, policies, legislation, which this is just more like a very informal chat, just getting the audience to know you a bit more, and just, hearing some of your experience in your 40 plus years.
Yeah, you keep reminding me. Your
40
Thank you for
plus
that.
years experience. And so we don't, you got labor hammering on one part of investing in property. You have, the conservative currently, where, I think they've done pretty well. I mean, this government, I got into property over the last 6 years. So predominantly, ever since I've been in property, over the last 6 years now, it's been the Conservative in power, so I've not really experienced what the Labour government looked like. But there's a lot that's changing. 2024 and beyond, for those who are looking to get into property, land development, commercial development, with government policies, what is the impact you think it's going to have?
Well, I think interest rates have probably stabilised. And I think interest rates at around base rate of 5% is probably where they need to be.
Yeah.
People will get used to it. You know, they had it too good for too long, far too good for too long. And, you know, interest rates of, you know, less than 1%, madness. That's the first thing. So I think people will get used to higher interest rates. And I think they're here to stay on the whole. They might drop a little bit next year, but not a great deal. I think the economy, they borrowed 400 billion to get us through COVID. I mean, that's a massive for any government. You can't win, really, they can't win for having done that. I mean, it's very, very hard. There will be a general election. I think it could be as late as January 2025. That's what I'm now told it could be. I was told that by a minister. Whether they know what they're doing or not, I don't know. Who knows? But maybe that's right. Michael Gove, who's the levelling up and the housing secretary, hasn't really helped the housing sector very much, in my view. It's been pretty difficult with landlords. You've got Section 21 and all this sort of thing changing. The Rent Reformers Act, it's all going to come in. Most of it is negative for landlords, in my view. But of course, that gives opportunities. 47,000 less landlords this year than last year. 26,000 landlords have left the business this year as well. So that gives opportunities for everybody else. There's a massive housing shortage.
Yeah.
So that is going to underwrite the market to a great extent. But I think it's going to be a steady year. Normally, always when in the general election year, things are very steady because people are cautious. They're not sure who's going to be in government and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, you and I think, do know who's going to be in government.
Well,
don't we?
Yeah, we kind of know where it's going, sadly. So if at the moment with all these different policies that is affecting, the landlord market, it's almost feel like the landlord is the enemy.
Well, if you think they're the enemy now, you wait till Labour get in. It'll be a lot worse.
Wow.
A lot worse.
How can landlords, how can those who are looking to, mitigate, how can they survive?
Well, I think I'm excited. Excited is the wrong word, probably. When people are getting out of something, there's always opportunities. And opportunities. So, I'm optimistic that over the next few years, there'll be plenty of money to be made out of property.
100%.
One way or the other. And I think that, Labour normally will spend more than the Conservatives, although that'll be difficult, I think, for them. They'll be tougher on landlords because they really don't believe anyone should own more than one home.
Even though you own it in a company? Structures?
Well, we'll see, won't we? I mean, I think they'll be on the side of social landlords, social tenants more than they will private landlords. I've been pretty poor, as we said just now, for private landlords.
Social tenants has always been a headache.
Social, yeah. When they say they're going to build 1.5 million homes, they mean social housing. They don't mean private. They mean social.
Oh.
That's what they mean by that. So we'll have to see.
Wow, John, this is exciting that you're here today, and we're looking forward to doing so many other things.
Yeah.
Maybe we should touch a little bit on that. I do a lot of trainings around BRRs, rent to rents, property sourcing, and you do more of the advanced stuff and especially, like I said, development. So for those who really want to know about development, which is, like I said, building ground up, like you said, upper, even commercial property investment, commercial property development, and so on. We are going to be doing a few things, together where people can obviously come and see us, speak to us. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, how to get them excited, as to the reason why. Because if you were in property 40 years plus ago and I came in 6 years ago and I'm making money and you've made your money, you're still making money and you're still going to go and make more, why should people get into, development?
Well, the first thing I've been asked by, I just do a small amount of, I do a few seminars, I get asked to speak at different events. I do some private mentorship one-to-one. I don't do a huge amount of it because I'm busy doing my own stuff. I can do some of it. And then I've been asked by a number of property educators over the years, would I like to, do some work with them and so on. And I've never felt that comfortable with most of them, to be honest with you. That's the truth. But with you, Daniel, I felt comfortable when I met you. I felt comfortable from the start. I've seen how you work. That you're offering a genuine service, if you like, to improve people's lives, and I think that's important. And I'm happy to be part of it. You're the expert on the rent to rent and the buy to lets and all the rest of it, and some of your clients and so on, and part of your group will want to step up and do
bigger deals.
The natural thing is to move, for the ones who are ambitious. If they're not ambitious, it doesn't matter. But if the ones who are, is to step up and perhaps start doing more development type deals. And I'm very happy to be part of what you're creating. And, it's got to be fun and enjoyable.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to next year.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much for having you on the Wealth and Business Podcast. By the way, there's going to be a show notes. John's social media handles and every other thing else is going to be in there, and we are going to be running a masterclass. So for any one of you who want to come and learn about commercial property development, land development, building all the way ground up to flats, there's going to be definitely a link on the show notes. Click on the link. Register yourself for that masterclass, and myself and John will see you there at the masterclass. So, John, anything you want to say?
I think, like we said, business has got to be fun, and it's serious, but it can also be enjoyable as well.
Absolutely.
And if it's not enjoyable, you shouldn't do it, in my view.
Yes.
So we're going to have some fun. We're going to enjoy it.
Yep.
We're going to give people lots of information, lots of confidence. And I think confidence is a really big thing.
Yes.
To have the confidence to go out and do what they want to do and achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
And I'm passionate to help people do that.
Absolutely.
As you are.
Thank you so much, John, for having me on the podcast. See you soon.